Welcome to our webinar. My name is Marissa Adams, and I'm the marketing manager here at Trace Security. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. We will be sending out the slides and recording to all of the attendees next week. To get us started, I wanted to introduce Trace Security and give you some background on our expertise in information security. With 19 years in business, Trace Security is a leading provider of cybersecurity and compliance solutions. Our company was founded on February 18th, 2004 to help banks and credit unions protect their customer and member information and comply with GLBA, FFIEC, and NCUA requirements. Since then, we have served over 3,000 organizations across the United States. Our comprehensive suite of solutions allow organizations to manage their information security program through IT risk assessments and audits, social engineering, penetration testing, security training, and more. At this time, I would like to turn things over to Gavin Debetaz and Justin Brose, two of our information security analysts with extensive amounts of knowledge on our remote social engineering services.
Hey, my name is Gavin. I've been performing remote social engineering services for Trace Security for over 3.5 years now, and I've been everything from Ryan from Fiserv to Steve from Cox Communications. I'm excited to share some of my knowledge and experiences with remote social engineering with you all.
Hi, my name is Justin, and I've been employed with Trace Security for a little over 3 years now. For most of that time, a large part of my job description was setting up and running remote social engineering campaigns. So with that in mind, I am able to add some additional perspective to Gavin's insights to help provide a deeper level of understanding on the topics we're covering today.
So what is remote social engineering? Here's a few definitions to get us started. Social engineering is defined as the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes. Today, we're focusing on remote social engineering specifically. The first and most common example of remote social engineering is phishing emails. This is the fraudulent practice of sending emails pretending to be from a reputable company to convince an individual to reveal personal information, click on a malicious link, or download malicious attachments. These emails can come in many different forms, such as fake coupons, notifications of banking account activity, or even internal company emails. Vishing is the practice of making fraudulent phone calls as a reputable company or individual to induce a target to reveal confidential information, such as banking account details or internal networking information. Common examples of this that most people have experienced include spam calls about your car's extended warranty or promises of free vacations. Smishing is a newer remote social engineering tactic that's gaining popularity. This is the practice of sending fraudulent text messages imitating a reputable company to convince an individual to reveal personal or confidential information. This is becoming increasingly common as it's very easy to set up phone numbers on websites such as Google Voice and TextNow.
Before we jump into a more detailed look of the previously mentioned items, I want to give you folks a quick overview of the current trends related to social engineering. The first of those trends comes from the source Packet Labs. They have found that in 2023, 92% of malware is being delivered by email. As we know, malware can be detrimental to an organization, and considering that almost all malware is being sent via email, it is becoming more and more important that the employees are trained on how to look for signs of phishing emails, phishing calls, and smishing texts. The next trend was analyzed by the company Cobalt. They have found that in 2023, 90% of all data breaches are linked to phishing attacks. Being that most organizations in the modern world hold so much personally identifiable information, it is exceedingly important that organizations such as yourselves protect those customers and their sensitive data. The final trend that we have prepared for you comes from a blog on getnux.com. They have identified that in 2020, the IC3 reported over 240,000 victims of phishing, smishing, vishing, and farming, costing over $54 million in losses, with smishing being the largest phishing type. This one is self-explanatory. Social engineering leads to large losses of money, making that previously mentioned employee education even more detrimental to the well-being of your organization.
Now, let's talk about manipulation tactics. An attacker will resort to a variety of different techniques in order to convince their target to comply with their demands. These include a sense of urgency, a time constraint, money offers, familiarity, and offers that just seem too good to be true. First up is a sense of urgency. A common tactic used to manipulate a target is presenting an issue with a sense of urgency that has severe consequences. This tactic plays to their target's fears, which might cause them to act irrationally instead of attempting to verify what the attacker is claiming. An example of this would be sending a phishing email that claims a user has become a victim of ransomware. If they don't send money to the attacker, their personal information could be spread across the internet. The attacker could even include threats about notifying anybody else, including law enforcement, about this issue. Next up is time constraints. This tactic uses a lack of time as a reason for a target to quickly act on what the attacker is demanding. This prevents the target from having time to reach out to appropriate parties or verify the attacker's claim. An example of this is an attacker claiming to have a scheduled appointment, such as when an internet service provider calls an individual to investigate an issue that needs to be addressed immediately. However, it may not always seem malicious. It could be something as simple as a limited time offer. Let's talk about money. Attackers are aware that most of their targets are concerned about their money's availability, or they would appreciate having free money. They'll use this factor to manipulate their targets in a variety of ways. This could include sending emails stating that their target's money has been, target has money they can claim, or claiming that the target's bank account has been compromised and they need to log in and change their password. Is it too good to be true? Similar to the promise of free money, attackers use the allure of free prizes or rewards to convince a target to comply with their demands. This is quite common in phishing emails, as attackers will use a large variety of promises that just seem too good to be true. This could range from something as large as an all-expenses-paid trip to the Caribbean, or something as small as a free chicken sandwich. This could even be presented as an internal promise within an organization, such as a fake email from an HR worker to claim new benefits. Finally, let's talk about familiarity. A dedicated attacker will do research on their target before attempting to compromise them, and they'll use that to establish familiarity and trust with their target. The internet makes this much easier, as there's a lot of information available for an attacker to scrape through and use in their attack. An example of this would be an attacker searching through an organization's LinkedIn users to determine who their executives or IT workers are. They could then have someone to name drop during a phone call, which might prompt their target to trust the validity of their call.
As stated before, phishing is a popular social engineering technique used by hackers to try and enumerate bits of information from an end user. This information could be phone numbers, other emails, names, usernames, passwords, the list goes on. Because the social engineering technique is so popular, it is important to be able to identify phishing emails and the different associated techniques that are used to elicit information from individuals at a company. To begin, we will start by listing a few types of phishing and some other techniques that malicious actors use to get information from individuals. The first type I would like to make you aware of is spear phishing. Spear phishing is a targeted phishing attack on a small group of people or one individual. Typical phishing campaigns are going to be sent out to large groups of people in hopes that anyone will bite. However, spear phishing has a more focused agenda. Usually, spear phishing will be targeted at the users with greater privileges, such as your IT admins or your network administrators. The next phishing technique I would like to discuss is known as whaling. Whaling is spear phishing with a narrower scope. This time, the attacker is looking to target C-suite employees of a company. These will be your CEOs, your CFOs, CSOs, or even your CIOs. This type of phishing can be extremely dangerous because those individuals in a company are on the receiving end of a lot of sensitive business information. These whaling attacks are typically designed to trick high-level employees into authorizing fraudulent payments. To try and avoid the above tactics, it's important to look out for clues like watering hole links. Watering hole links are URLs that are usually one character off from the real URL that the victim is trying to access. For example, if you tried to visit YouTube, but you accidentally swapped the O and the U, an attacker could set up a fake site at the end of that misspelled URL in hopes that they could capture your traffic and exploit your machine. To try and make phishing emails as convincing as possible, hackers will create custom emails to lower the defenses of phishing victims. These emails can range from accurately replicated third-party vendor emails to restaurant coupons and even emails from the victim's supervisor. The following are a couple of popular email templates that we send out through our proprietary phishing software, TraceFishing. We also include an example of the HTML of one of our email templates. Next up, we're going to talk about smishing. Smishing is very similar to phishing. The largest difference between the two is the medium in which the malicious messages are sent through. Phishing uses emails to deliver its unethical data, but smishing uses SMS, more widely known as text messages. Since most of us use our phones on a consistent basis, naturally malicious actors are going to adapt to the technological landscape in front of them. So they decided to craft text messages to catch unsuspecting victims off guard. Most of the techniques from phishing can be copy and pasted here. A clever use of smishing would be to create a template that replicates a two-factor authentication text message to convince the user to open the text message. They could also be text messages that replicate updates on package shipping information and messages that mimic gift card giveaways. These texts are usually used to exploit weaknesses in the human psyche, such as instant gratification or the allure of being promised something free. The following is an example of a smishing test performed by TraceSecurity. This one in particular included a fake verification code, a fake login page that mimicked Google, and a redirect to a landing page letting the user know that they failed the test.
A clever and charismatic attacker might realize the heightened potential for a phishing call over a phishing email to compromise their target. It's easier to thoroughly investigate a phishing email, but a target who's on the phone will not have that same freedom. An attacker will use a large variety of approaches to manipulate their targets over the phone. An increasingly growing threat to the integrity of phone calls is the advancement of synthetic speech technology and AI. In a study conducted by the University of Chicago, 14 participants held conversations with a real person and a synthetic text-to-speech voice. Over half of the participants were unable to distinguish the synthetic voice from the authentic voice. These synthetic voices are becoming rapidly more advanced due to AI, and they are now very accessible to the public. This technology can be used to imitate voices easily if there's recordings of that voice available. A common tactic that's used to compromise an organization is to impersonate a reputable vendor that the organization works with. This can range from an internet service provider, the core financial processor provider, or even a sanitation company. Once the trust has been established over the phone, the attacker will use it to attempt to convince their target to reveal sensitive information, navigate to certain websites, or even run commands on their computers. These tactics are used to obtain information such as IP addresses, login information, or other sensitive network information that could assist in a larger scale network compromise. It's important to verify the authenticity of vendors over the phone before proceeding with any of their demands. Some organizations accomplish this by providing their vendors with a key word beforehand that'll be spoken as an authentication method, such as a color of the day. Many attackers will try to impersonate a real customer of an organization to obtain sensitive information and compromise that target account. With enough time and research, an attacker can gather information on their target such as their birthday, education, address, and more. This information could be used to attempt to bypass an organization's authentication methods over the phone if they're not thorough enough. That's why it's important to create strong authentication policies and properly verify every user that calls over the phone. On that note, all your verification methods, like a special word or phrase you say, should not be something that can be found about you online. For sure, everybody on Facebook already knows your dog's name. While plenty of attackers find success through remote social engineering alone, they also can and will use the information gleaned from your employees in a larger scale cyber attack. It's been mentioned that the majority of larger scale cyber attacks start with social engineering, such as phishing emails. Once an employee clicks on a malicious link or downloads malicious attachments, the attacker will obtain lots of sensitive information, such as IP addresses, and they can establish a backdoor into the company's network. Once this backdoor is established, they could use common exploits to create their own user account on the network, which could lead to a variety of cyber attacks, such as a denial of service or man-in-the-middle attack. An attacker can also use remote social engineering to assist with an on-site social engineering attempt by providing false verification and authenticity to their visit through phone calls and emails. It is much easier for the attacker to establish trust in person if their target's aware of who they are and why they're there beforehand.
TraceSecurity offers a wide variety of remote social engineering testing and training for your employees. Our phishing and smishing campaigns can be customized in a variety of ways. They can be sent out all at once, or they can be spread out over a month. Our analysts can work to customize phishing emails to better fit an organization's needs. They can also determine the email address that the email was sent from, even an internal employee such as an HR or an IT worker. TraceSecurity's campaigns also feature different landing pages that the user will be directed to if they click on the link. This can be used to immediately notify the user that they failed the test, redirect them to an inconspicuous blank web page, or even route the user to a login page to test if they will enter their login information. It is considered best practice to test 100% of your employees against phishing. TraceSecurity recommends a custom approach to the emails and sending configurations. A phishing email will be much more believable if it comes from a vendor that an organization works for or a restaurant chain that is popular with employees. So what happens when an employee clicks a link and fails a phishing test? We have the option to set up training videos with quizzes. These trainings can also be assigned separately from phishing engagements for educational purposes. TraceSecurity recently revamped our entire education library with 30 brand new education courses.
TraceSecurity's phishing engagements are unique from a lot of other companies out there. We actually perform live phone calls with a real analyst like me. Using a general script, we call employees at your company and attempt to fool them into following certain instructions and/or divulging information over the phone. During the scoping process, custom scripts can be arranged for phishing projects. For example, the organization can use specific vendors that they work with. By default, an analyst will attempt to get a user to navigate to a website or open a command prompt. But the organization might want the analyst to test if their employees will reveal other sensitive information over the phone. We could also perform phishing calls using seed accounts. This would involve an organization setting up a fake account in their system, which the analyst would attempt to compromise. They would do this by attempting to evade the organization's authentication techniques, such as refusing the last four of their social security number or claiming the wrong address. It's considered best practice to perform phishing against at least 10% of your employees. TraceSecurity recommends targeting your phishing testing to the employees who don't typically answer calls, like your tellers or receptionists. Instead, target those who receive fewer phone calls, like IT, accounting, the loan department, and your executives. Beyond our remote social engineering offerings, we can also perform a larger scale security awareness training with your employees. Each training is developed custom to each client's industry, size, trends, and request. These trainings are typically 1 hour long with time for questions at the end, but we could adjust that to your needs. These trainings can be performed in person at your location or remotely via teleconference. Remote sessions can be performed live or recorded and sent out for on-demand viewing. We can even use your latest remote social engineering results in the training. If there is something that's commonly missed across your organization during testing, we can make sure to focus on that during the training.
After a thorough review, it is clear to see that attackers will leverage human weaknesses to gain sensitive network information, enumerate personally identifiable information, and/or gain financial advantage over your organization. That is why it is increasingly important not only to make your employees and yourselves aware of phishing, vishing, smishing, and associated tactics, but to also educate yourselves on how to identify these attack methods before they're leveraged. This is why TraceSecurity is the best choice for your members, your employees, and your organization as a whole.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and start getting into any questions that have been submitted, and feel free to continue to ask questions as we go. So first question I have is, what happens if my employees don't answer their phones during phishing testing, since they're live phone calls?
I could take this one, Justin, if you want. So typically,
go
if
ahead.
your employees don't answer the phone during phishing testing, we will count that as 1/3 of an engagement, meaning that 3 missed calls would count as 1 attempted phone call. And that's sort of how we grade that.
And they asked if you would leave, if we would ever leave voicemails.
Typically, no, we don't leave voicemails. If we cannot establish that a call, we typically just end the call there and may call back later.
Okay, and someone asked if they could provide HTML from like an email that they use for our custom templates in phishing campaigns.
Yeah, I've got this one, Gavin. So yes, you can. We do have special options with our phishing packages where you can submit custom templates for us to send out to your employees. We actually recommend that you do this so that way you can get the most accurate results out of your phishing engagements.
Something I wanted to add to that too is that if there are externally hosted images in the email HTML, we might have to find ways to host that, and that may sometimes cause issues, but typically I don't think we've had too many issues with that.
All right, let's see. Somebody asked what is the most common type of email received in a business? I guess trying to see which would be like the best to emulate in a phishing attack. I guess what are the like most common types of emails that people typically?
I can try to answer this one. I would say it kind of depends based on trends right now. I mean, typically it's going to be with apps that are more popular or websites that are more popular. I know that during COVID, there was a good bit of COVID emails sent out. And, you know, around tax season, people will send out things like that. I would say that, again, it depends on what the current trends are. So it's good to, you know, stay up to date with that. But yeah, that's my 2 cents there. Just sort of what's popular at the moment, you know.
Yeah, and just to quickly tack on to the back of that as well. A good method you could use is look around you and see what restaurants you have around you. We have a couple of restaurant coupons that we normally use, and you can also tailor those to be sent out around lunchtime. So that way you can try to trigger that response from your employees to, you know, like say it's a Burger King email. It's like, oh, I got a Burger King near me. I could use this email, and they might click on that link.
All right, and someone asked, how often do you send out phishing email tests?
We can send them out as often as you are scheduled for them. I know some people like to do monthly campaigns. Some people like to do quarterly, annually. It's really up to you to decide how often they're sent out.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah. What is the most successful social engineering test that you've gotten to perform?
I've got a good story for this one. I actually wrote about this a while back, but I did a phishing campaign over the phone, and I called around all of this company's employees, and I wasn't able to get really much of a response, but I was able to get the CEO of the company to answer on the phone. And just kind of through some quick, witty conversation, we had some small talk about local restaurants. And, you know, granted, they're in Nebraska. I've never been to Nebraska, so I was quickly looking up restaurants around their area. And me and the CEO really hit it off. And man, he revealed just all kinds of confidential information to me, his internal IP address, and I had him running commands on this command prompt. And I can only imagine if that was a real attack situation, how bad that could have gone for them. But yeah, that was one of my personal best compromises, I would say.
Yeah, and I also have a personal story. Mine was also in phishing, and I was running this phishing campaign, and I was able to call the same user twice by establishing trust between the victim and myself. And because of this, the victim gave me not only internal and external IP addresses from their own device, but when I called back the next day, he recognized my voice, and he also gave me information on his coworker's device. So I got external and internal IP addresses on his device and his coworker's device. And, just as a quick reminder, any information divulged this way could be a critical piece for an attacker to make a large-scale network compromise.
Okay. And someone asked, in your experience, what email campaign trips up the most people?
Me personally, I tend to find a lot of success with the food-based ones. I guess it's just because some people sign up for those kind of accounts with their email. So if you have somebody that maybe uses DoorDash or Grubhub, I find that those get a lot of responses. And I have had some pretty good success with some of the internal emulation ones, especially when you go as far as to put somebody in your organization as the email address. I find that I've had a lot of luck sending out things like that, like maybe an IT worker saying that we're testing out some new multi-factor and you need to re-sign into your account. For me personally, that's just what I've seen the most success with.
Yeah, to tackle on to the back of that as well, I think that the answer to that is kind of dynamic. You really have to look at your organization as a whole and determine what your employees are most interested in. So again, like Gavin was saying, if you have a bunch of people who enjoy eating food at your company, then yeah, definitely those restaurant coupons can for sure get them.
Okay, and someone asked do you find success when you're social engineering call centers?
I have personally. There is kind of the issue there is that we tend to use different aliases during our phone calls. So if it's only one person working a call center, they'll usually realize, hey, this person sounds similar to before. It's kind of a give and take. A lot of times when I work with a call center, I'll just try to as quickly as I can have them redirect me to somebody else. But I have found success with call centers. It's really just a matter of how your call center is set up and how your receptionists are trained and things like that.
Okay. Somebody said that our employees are starting to get used to the campaigns and we've moved them from monthly to every other month, which means that it's working. What other methods can we use to keep them educated?
Do you want to take this one, or I have an answer for this too?
Yeah, you can take that one, Gavin.
Okay. I guess just some personal recommendations. I'd say that if you're not, make sure you're mixing up the templates and keeping that fresh. And if you want to try to get, like we mentioned before, a little more personable with the templates and emulate some real employees or some like real local restaurants and things like that, I think that definitely keeps it interesting. And if you're not doing phishing calls, I think that that's a good way to test people, because it's not something they always expect. Is to have somebody over the phone trying to get the information out of them. And yeah, I mean, smishing, we've had some good success with the smishing engagements too, especially if you're willing to give that a shot. So I'd say just, keep it interesting. Definitely don't just reuse the same templates, because people definitely will catch on to that. But yeah, that's my recommendation there.
Okay, and this is a good question. Someone asked if we are just starting out, do you find it's easy? Do you find that it's a good idea to start with something easy to identify in social engineering and then ramp up the complexity from there?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to take this one. We do have sort of a large variety of templates to go from, some which are very, very accurate to what an actual email would look like, and some that I'd say are a little more believable or not as believable. Sort of to also answer another question I saw about Burger King, we do have a Burger King template that, in my opinion, is not the most believable. It's a little bare bones, but you should be surprised how many people still click on it. So yeah, we have sort of varying complexities, and we can definitely work with you on how you want to progress the intensity of it as it goes on.
Yeah, so you saw the question about if it's legal or not to use a brand like Burger King in the simulation.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of templates that are based on real organizations like Amazon, TurboTax, Burger King, Grubhub. So yeah, there's definitely no limitations there.
The only limitations we have in there is if we end up getting a cease and desist from the company asking us to stop, in which case we obviously will. But
right,
the real attackers are using them, so it makes sense that you would want to also test against that stuff. Okay, what is the best way to check a link in a text message smishing attempt?
Let's see.
I can
you
take
go
that
ahead,
one,
Gavin.
Gavin. So you should never trust links within your SMS text messages. If it's something from your bank, I would recommend going straight to the bank's website and trying to look at that information via their website. Try not to click on any links on any sort of media that is sent to you, because especially on phones, there's not really a way to check where the link is actually going. So yeah, just as a blanket statement, try not to click on those links. If it's something like a multi-factor authentication method, if you just sent a multi-factor authentication text message to your phone, then it's probably worth believing there. And again, you're just using numbers, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, try not to click on those links at all.
Someone asked, do you think that giving out machine or network information has to do with lack of training from the IT department?
I would say that if it's, I'll try to take this one. I would say if it's from a social engineering perspective, I mean, I would say that definitely doing social engineering training is going to help with that. I wouldn't say it's directly from a lack of training. If you're doing training, then, I mean, some people are just not prepared for all the different possibilities of what social engineering could look like. Some people will be able to identify some things, but not identify something like maybe an internal email, and they wouldn't suspect. So maybe not necessarily a lack of training, but just being thorough with the training and sort of addressing as many areas as you can to make your employees aware. So that's kind of my insight into that.
Okay. Someone asked if smishing has to be sent to company issued phones.
No, I to take this one, I don't believe it does. If somebody wants to verify me on that, I'm pretty sure we can send it to any phone numbers. Personally, and it's the same thing for phishing as well. I have had calls where I've called people on their personal phones. I feel a little bad doing that personally. I like to kind of keep it in the company limits and not call anybody in their house. But I don't believe it has to be a company issued phone. But correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe you're right. I think that there's we may need some kind of acceptable use policy for their personal devices for work. If that were the case, I believe that is how we handle that. But we can definitely give a definite answer if they want to reach out over email.
Right.
Okay. And is there social engineering you'd recommend for different groups of workers, being like different genders, different job types, things like that?
I could take this one if you want, Justin.
Sure. Yeah, you got it.
I feel like I'm on a bit of a roll right now. Personally, again, sort of as we mentioned, I think it's definitely based on your employees and what you know about them as to how you address it. I would say that if it's more women, I mean, get to know the women and what their interests are, and maybe some restaurants that they frequent. Really, I wouldn't say it's based on. I guess just base it on what you know about your employees. If you want to make it for more groups. Again, we have a lot of offerings. I mean, we have a big catalog of templates that we can use, and we can work to make custom ones. So really, the freedom to target different groups is pretty large. So yeah, I mean, we have templates from everything from like Amazon, as I mentioned, to we have Starbucks coupons and things like that. So we can definitely target those different groups in different ways.